Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. We have some movement on the compensation fund front. According to The Sun, 61 of Jeffrey Epstein's survivors have entered into negotiations to receive compensation from this fund. Now, we know there has been basically a knife fight going on in the courtroom between Indike and Khan and Denise George. So I'm interested to see what the parameters of this compensation are. So with that said, let's jump into the article from The Sun and see what they have to say about it. Headline: Survivor Fund. Jeffrey Epstein estate prepares to pay out over $100 million as they settle with 61 of the pedophile's survivors. This article was authored by Chris Spargo. The Jeffrey Epstein estate and 61 of the pedophile survivors have entered settlement talks. The women have all agreed to participate in a victim compensation fund that will assess each claim before issuing a payout within 90 days, meaning that they could have their settlements just before the anniversary of the pedophile's death on August 10th. Well, that would be a nice way to memorialize Jeffrey Epstein's death date for the survivors, right? Get themselves a nice big fat chunk of change, a big fat piece of money. That way they can begin to rebuild their lives. That way they can start moving forward. They can put some closure on this, put some distance behind this, and keep it moving, right? Because these survivors, not only were they abused by Jeffrey Epstein and his cohorts, they were abused by the legacy media, and they were also abused by the prosecutors. So it's finally time for these girls to get some closure once and for all. And if that closure for some of these girls is getting the compensation and then moving on with their lives, then so be it. None of us are in their shoes. None of us know what they have been through. None of us know how rough their journey has been. So I'm sure there are a lot of girls who are involved in this who want to get that compensation and just move on with their lives. And there are going to be other survivors who want to go even harder than that, though, that are going to want to go all the way to the mattresses and try and bring down every single person who was involved with their abuse. And no matter where the survivors fall on that spectrum, what matters is that there's going to be some closure here for some of them at the very least. And after what they've been through, after how they've suffered at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein and all of these supposed people who are not involved, should we say, all of these enablers, I think it's time for them to get a little bit of closure and be able to move on with their lives. The Sun has obtained legal filings which state that 44 survivors have joined the 12 women represented by Jordan K. Merson of Merson Law and 5 women working with Lisa Bloom of the Bloom firm in agreeing to the parameters of the fund. You know, it doesn't shock me that Lisa Bloom's clients would be agreeing to the fund right away, because I just don't have any faith in Lisa Bloom to conduct herself correctly and conduct herself with honor. She seems like the type of person to me who is only after the almighty buck. And we see it again recently. She just came out, and we know that Joe Biden is being credibly accused by Tara Reade right now. And Lisa Bloom comes out and she has the audacity to say, "Oh, well, I believe you, Tara Reade, but I have to support Biden anyway because that's the only way to get rid of Trump." On what planet is that okay? How about sticking to your guns, all right? Joe Biden is being credibly accused right now, and Lisa Bloom is coming out and throwing her support behind him while at the same time acting like she is this big defender of survivors of abuse and sex trafficking. Lisa Bloom has it all backwards, and she should just back away from this case right now because she does nothing but discredit everything that she's involved in my opinion. She's a disgrace. Among the women to have joined that initial group of 17 are Annie Farmer, Maria Farmer, Teresa Helm, Juliette Bryant, Jane Sarah Ransom, and Virginia Roberts. Well, we know all of those names, right? I don't need to go into the details with all of those names. We know how brave those survivors are. We know what they have been through. We know how they have stood up in the face of this madness. And it's nice to see that there's some movement, and it's really nice to hear that some compensation might be coming down the pipe for these ladies. The total cost of these settlements will likely exceed $100 million based on Epstein's past settlements with survivors in his Palm Beach cases, which range from just under $1 million to more than $3 million. I kind of disagree with that. I think it's going to be a whole heap load more than the first time around. I think there's a lot more interest in the case. I think there's a lot more pressure for the right thing to be done. And I wouldn't be surprised if it is triple that when all is said and done, the money that gets paid out in this compensation fund. Because what Jeffrey Epstein did to these survivors and what these survivors have had to live with since basically childhood for some of them and their young 20s and teens for others is completely unacceptable. And it goes beyond the pale of a few $100,000 in my opinion. We're talking 7 figures for each one of these survivors. Anything less is a joke in my opinion. Millions for each one of them. And now here is where we get to the devil is in the details though, right folks? The women will now have to sign a 4-page contract that states they can never again file legal action against the Epstein estate and the co-executors Darren Indyke and Richard Kahn. You see, this ruffles me a bit. I think that Kahn and Indyke are snaking their way out of this. They're slithering their way out of this. They're way more involved than just being the lawyers, and especially Indyke. I want to see these two answer some hard questions, some really hard questions. They will also be unable to file suit against any entities or individuals who are or have ever been engaged by, whether as independent contractors or otherwise, employed by, worked in any capacity for, or provided any services to Mr. Epstein, the Epstein entities, or the Epstein estate. See, that bothers me as well. I don't like this sort of wrangling, this sort of talking, okay? They can't file any suit against anybody else? That doesn't make any sense to me. And again, it's the estate playing games. And I have to tell you, I don't know if if I was a lawyer and I was representing my clients, this kind of language would really scare me, because I don't know. I'm just really weird about trusting people like Indyke and Kahn and the system in general to protect the best interest of these survivors. Now, Jordan Merson, I'm not too familiar with him as a lawyer, but the ladies being represented by Lisa Bloom, I definitely fear for them coming out of this hole, because I just don't trust Lisa Bloom. I have a lot more confidence in Bradley Edwards and David Boies and Sigrid McCauley to make sure that their clients are taken care of and to make sure that the survivors that they're representing come out of this hole and with their rights intact to go after whoever else might have been involved. So I've reached out to some people and I'm trying to get some clarification right now about the language we're hearing in this article. So I will update the language when I hear back from the person that I reached out to. That way we can get a little bit more context, right? Some more clarity, and we can understand just exactly what this means. This agreement does not, however, prohibit the women from suing individuals they may have been trafficked to while being abused by Epstein. Now, that's very important, because anybody who was partaking in this trafficking ring, and anybody who had young girls or women trafficked to them through Jeffrey Epstein's network, they should definitely have to face the full penalty of their actions. And not only should they be sued by the survivors, they should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law by the federal government. That means at least one woman, Roberts, could potentially file a lawsuit against Prince Andrew. I don't even think it's potential at this point. I think that there's no doubt in my mind, honestly, that Virginia is going to pursue this all the way to the very end. What she has been through, the burden that has been placed on her shoulders, and how she had to navigate this minefield by herself for so long with no support from the legacy media or prosecution, it's abhorrent to me. It's disgusting, and it can never be allowed to happen again. What occurred here can never, ever be allowed to happen again. And pursuing these people to the very ends of the earth is a very good way to make sure that going forward, people understand that this behavior will not be tolerated in any civilized society. Roberts claims she was trafficked to Prince Andrew and has provided a photo of her and the royal at the home of Ghislaine Maxwell. But the prince, aka Joe Exotic of the Windsor family, has denied her claim and suggested the image of them is photoshopped. It is not photoshopped, folks, all right? We've heard from the Kiwi photographer, I forget his name right now, who was involved in the original photos, looking at them, etc., etc. Zero chance in his mind that they were photoshopped. FBI experts have come out and said they aren't photoshopped. Just more BS from Prince Andrew and his team, all right? The fund also allows the women to remain anonymous should they wish, but they are also not barred from speaking about their compensation or allegations against Epstein. Now, that's good, right? Because I've said it once and I'll say it again. The story is the survivors to tell in whatever manner they choose to do so. They should not be pressured. They should not be cajoled. They should not be annoyed or harassed. If a survivor wants to speak about what they went through, then obviously they should have the platform to do so. But if these survivors do not wish to do that, the media, the legacy media, should not try and chase them down, should not harass them, and should not bother them. They have been through enough. After receiving their compensation, the women will also have 3 days to dismiss with prejudice any legal actions, whether lawsuits, probate claims, or otherwise that releasor has filed against any of the releasees, with each party to bear her, his, or its own costs and attorney's fees. Again, more legalese. The estate making sure that they're not spending one more cent than they have to, because we all know that Mark Epstein and the estate, well, they want to enrich themselves on Epstein's ill-gotten gains themselves, don't they? Merson confirmed the validity of the documents, telling The Sun, yes, my clients want to proceed with a voluntary fund so that they have an opportunity to be fully compensated for their significant injuries. Lisa Bloom also confirmed to The Sun that her 5 clients have agreed to participate in the fund. Now, we've heard from Merson and we've heard from Bloom here, but I'm interested to hear from Virginia Roberts' legal team and Maria and Annie's legal team, the boys Edwards crew, and I'd like to hear what they have to say, because I am very confident that if anyone is going to safeguard their clients' rights and their clients' ability to move forward correctly in this case, it's those parties, because we've seen from their actions in the past that that's what they're about. These settlements are occurring far faster than many anticipated, with some estimating it would take decades before these women saw any money. And that's true. I thought it would be a long time too. I thought that this would be a straight up battle for the ages in the courthouse. But it looks like there's some movement. It looks like we're getting some momentum here. And I want all of these survivors to be made right financially. There's zero doubt about it. But at the same time, I want to make sure that the estate isn't wiggling off the hook here. There's a lot going on, folks. We just had those 70 names released. There's more to come. These people cannot wiggle off of the hook. Even if this compensation funds agreement gives them a little bit of protection, it does not protect them from the federal government, okay? So the federal government should not even pay attention to what's going on in this compensation fund, and they should continue with their pursuit of making arrests here, because Look, these people cannot get away with what they've gotten away with. We cannot allow it. Society cannot allow it. There has to be a place where you draw a line. There has to be a time where you say to yourself, this is the mountain that I'm willing to die on. And for me, I've certainly chosen my mountain. This is where I'm making my last stand. This is the Battle of Thermopylae for me. These people must be brought to justice. A quarterly accounting report filed by executors for the estate that was obtained by The Sun showed that 33 individuals or companies were seeking damages to be paid out from Epstein's $600 million trust. That number has now doubled. A majority of complaints against Epstein have been filed in 3 separate courts in New York. 10 are being tried in federal court in the Southern District of New York, the same venue where Epstein was being tried on criminal charges prior to taking his own life in August, allegedly. And here we go with the again in the SDNY, the Southern District of New York, the once noble Southern District of New York. Now, it's an absolute dumpster fire. That's right, I said it. They're involved in every incompetent situation we see come before us in the news, and it's just the facts at this point, folks. The SDNY is an absolute joke. Berman, dragging his feet, doesn't seem to care about the survivors, in my opinion, and don't even get me started on Maureen Comey. Do not even get me started on that lady. 6 of the 10 have been filed by women who choose not to identify themselves in court papers, while the other 4 were filed by women who have gone public with their allegations of sexual abuse. Maria Farmer, who claims she was violently groped by Epstein and Maxwell in 1996, is one of the women. Her sister Annie, who alleges that Epstein made her give him a topless massage when she was underage, also filed a separate complaint. Teresa Helm was 22 when she claims Epstein sexually assaulted her during a job interview. Juliette Bryant alleges that she was raped by Epstein multiple times and that he emailed her a request for nude photos just months before his arrest. In addition to those 10 lawsuits, 9 others have been filed in New York, but in state Supreme Court. This includes one complaint that lists 9 Jane Does as plaintiffs and another filed by 2 unnamed females. There are also complaints filed by Jennifer Araz and Tila Davies. Araz sued Epstein days after he went to prison and then refiled to sue his estate after his death. She claims the convicted pedophile abused her for over a year at his Upper East Side townhouse while she was attending a nearby school. These people are sick, folks. This guy is just a sick bastard. Every time I read about what he was involved in and how he abused these girls, it makes me violently enraged. I just don't understand how people can conduct themselves this way. It's utter evil. It's evil incarnate is what these people were. They were the embodiment of everything that is evil. The complaint also names 3 of the women in Epstein's orbit as defendants: Maxwell, Leslie Groff, and Simberly Espinoza. Davies claims she was raped for years by Epstein and then tossed aside when she informed him she had developed an eating disorder. I mean, wow. Wow. You can't make this stuff up, folks. You really can't make it up. It's something that is directly out of a movie, and if somebody was to tell me all of this was a real life, I would tell them they were crazy. But here we are. We are in the middle of it. We are in the thick of it, and things are moving at a very fast pace right now. The question is, when will the justice system catch up to the civil court system? Because what we really need at this point, and all that will really matter for anybody following the case at this point, is justice for these survivors. It starts with this compensation, no doubt about it. But arrests need to happen. The core 4 needs to be brought in. Jean-Luc Brunel, he needs to be brought in. Every single person involved with this criminal enterprise, every person who helped facilitate Jeffrey Epstein's crimes must be indicted under RICO statutes now. Not tomorrow, not next week, now. What are you waiting for, Attorney General Berman? All right, folks, so later on tonight, I received a letter from an academic who is a professor at several universities, and has some of his colleagues have also gotten together with them, and they've produced this draft of a letter, and we're going to read that later on the Daily Drop, so be looking out for that. What it does for me is it gives me a little bit of hope that the whole entire world of academia isn't disgusting like we've seen so far, because what we've seen when the curtain has been drawn back in the world of professors and academics and scholars, it has been all bad, folks. There are a lot of disgusting, depraved players in that part of this case. So it gives me some faith that, you know, the whole entire institution isn't corrupt when we hear from somebody like this professor who is fired up about what occurred at Harvard and in some of the other academic institutions. So we're going to read that letter later on, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what's going on here in the compensation realm, and we'll add some more context once I hear back from some of the people that I reached out to try and get some more details in regards to how the compensation will go. All right, folks, I hope everybody has a fantastic day. If you want to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also contact me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All right, folks, until later on, I'll talk to you then.